Deputy Minister, Mr. Bulelani Magwanishe, the Deputy Minister of Department of Public Enterprises, Professor Pindile Lukele Olurunju, I hope I have said it correctly, Dr. Edith Madela Mka, who is the Director of the ICSU Regional Office for Africa, as well as our invited guest, Rungano Karimanzira. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity on behalf of the Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, Professor Aaron Rensbeck, to welcome you all. Professor Rensbeck would have loved to be here in person, because nothing is closer to his heart than this continent, than young people, than a theme such as the one that I see shot through the program of your engagement from the 16th up to the 19th of February. I want to do two things and then go and sit down, because the keynote speech will be given to us by none other than the Deputy Minister, whose presence here is a real honor for the University of Johannesburg. The two things I want to do is simply to make a few general remarks, and then also to say a few things about the University of Johannesburg, which welcomes you here today. Dr. Zondi has already referred to the importance of thinking, and Africa as a thinking continent, and African peoples as a thinking people, and not merely tabula rasa on which anyone can come and write what they want to write. And I think that's a very important starting point for our conversation, Dr. Zondi. In fact, a year ago, I was invited to a conference in Germany in the town of Aachen. And in the conference write-up that I had to look at before I left, it was mentioned that there was a shortage of young people in that town, that the vast majority of the inhabitants were quite old, actually. And I wryly responded by email saying, I can bring you a busload of young people from South Africa. They will youthify your town very quickly. We have an excess of young people in South Africa. Africa is a young continent. We have far more young people than we have older people. And sometimes I am not sure that young people themselves recognize their value and their key role, not just for the future, but for the present, for the present of Africa. And so, when I listen to the current interim president of the Central African Republic, who was being interviewed last night on Al Jazeera, very articulate lady. I hope some of you saw that interview where she was outlining her dreams for her country, the Central African Republic, a country that is right at the center of Africa, as the name of the country says, but a country that is torn apart by conflict. And as she was speaking, they sometimes had clips of the soldiers that are fighting a senseless war in that country. And when you look closely, you will see that it is young people. The anti-Balaka is nothing but young people. The other side is nothing but young people. If you go to South Sudan, you will find the same thing happening. All the conflicts in Africa, you could talk about them, but essentially what you have are young people fighting against one another. Talk about the protests that are going on in the country at the moment, in our own country. And if you look very closely, and if you forget about the other digital statistics about what is going on there, you will see that this is a young people's phenomenon. So, what is the role of young people in the future of Africa? Can we continue to pontificate about this future without pausing to ask ourselves what young people can and must do about the future of this continent? Africa at the crossroads? My fear is that the crossroads are not the roads that we built ourselves, as you rightly alluded to. So it's bad enough to be at the crossroads, but if the roads are not even constructed by you, you are in bigger trouble. And so for me, it's the question of what the youth of this continent want to do. Please just switch it off if you can. And I'm sorry that... do you know how to switch it off? This could be the CIA. Sorry about that. That is the music of Zimbabwe that was playing there. Anyway, so those are my general remarks, and I hope that you will reflect on this during this conference. We at the University of Johannesburg, perhaps just a few things about the University of Johannesburg. University of Johannesburg has got 4 campuses, and you are in one of them. It is the only university in this country with a campus in Soweto. And the campus in Soweto is arguably one of the most beautiful, the most tech-savvy campuses of any university in this country. My heart was broken when I read an article by a Sowetan columnist, which was clearly poorly informed, that said that the Soweto campus of the University of Johannesburg is a kind of I'm trying to look for better words than I found in the article, a kind of a dumping ground. And I was sure that this person has never set foot at that campus. I don't think that the US Embassy would have allowed Barack Obama to go and speak at a dumping ground kind of campus. And it's important for me, who comes from Soweto, born and bred in Soweto, because every time I go to that campus, I say to myself, if only there was a campus like this, a university like this, when I grew up in Soweto, I would be a biologist today, or a computer engineer, or a scientist of a very serious happening scientist, as my kids talk about. But look, I'm just a bureaucrat, because when I grew up, there was not a campus as beautiful and as well equipped with all the technological things you can think of for teaching and learning. We also have at the University of Johannesburg another campus at Doornfontein, not very far from here, just a little further than Wits University. And that campus is a campus where our engineering faculty is located. Also, our health sciences faculty is located there. It is the fourth of our campuses. Not far from here, just across the SABC, there is a campus which we call the Banting Road campus. The university has a total of 49,000 students. Now, that is quite a large complement of students for one university to have. Of that 49,000 students, about 7,000 are postgraduate students and 42,000 roughly are undergraduate. And I think it's an important thing to say because one of the things that the university is proud about is that up to 20% of our student body come from the poorest section of our society here in South Africa. And about 3,000 of that 49,000 are international students from all over the world, mainly, of course, from SADC countries. One of the things that amazed me was checking our top 10 collaborators, in other words, universities with whom the University of Johannesburg is collaborating, was to discover that the University of Witwatersrand, WITS, is actually one of our top 10 collaborators, and it is just next door here. What does that say? That says that it is important as it is for African universities to be looking for collaboration with so-called top-class international universities. It is also important that African universities collaborate with one another. And that is an area that I think still needs a lot of work. And it's a very important thing for the University of Johannesburg because we have, for example, worked very closely with the University of Fort Hare and the University of Limpopo to try and assist those universities to have their accounting qualifications accredited by the professional body AYGS. And we worked closely with them, and now we are very proud that both those universities, their accounting programs are now accredited. We are continuing to do the same, working with the University of Venda in the same regard to assist them towards the accreditation of their accounting qualifications. Before the new University of Mpumalanga, which has just been established this year, was formed, this university was actually incubating, if you like, the new University of Mpumalanga in Siabuswa, where we had a campus that was the campus that was soon to become part of the new University of Mpumalanga. Recently, there has been a lot of controversy about student funding in the country. And I think it's a very legitimate matter that students have forced on the agenda of the universities, and they have forced on the agenda of government, because of the 1 million students in the tertiary system in South Africa. This is, if you like, the most privileged 1 million people in South Africa. Out of the 51 million, how many are we? 50 million, 51 million? So we have 1 million young South Africans in tertiary institutions. And And of course, if you look at it, what is 1 million against 50 million? It's a very small number, even before you add the other problems that we have. But of those, nearly 500,000 would not be at university if it wasn't for government funding. So the debate about NSFAS and government funding, which SASCO and other student formations has forced us to talk about, is an important one. Make no mistake about it. It's a very important discussion. But of course, the question is whether you want to have a violent protest as part and parcel of that discussion. And the question is whether you want to protest against the universities, about that. I was saying to the students one day that, this protest is for me a little like your children coming to protest against you for earning too little. So they come to you and say, Dad, you earn too little, so we are protesting against you. Now, I don't know what that helps. I suppose it will force the dad to go and cry before his employers, except that these kids are also saying, as part of our protest, we want you to stop going to work. And that is part of what was a little bit problematic about this. But the point about funding of higher education in this country, on the continent, remains an important one from which we cannot run away. We at the University of Johannesburg spend up to 110 million rands per annum to try and help students with their tuition fees. We spend about 48 million on tuition fees. We spend about 30 million on bursaries from our own funds. We have a meal assistance program because there are students whose parents only manage to pay tuition. They can't pay anything more. So these kids go around hungry. And together with the gift of the givers, we provide about 2,000 students with 2 meals a day. And those are some of the things that we try and do as a university to make access to higher education not only mere access, but access that can lead to success. Because there's no point in having access to higher education if you are not going to succeed. And so these are just some of the things that we do here. And as a result of that, our first year success rate of first year entering students is at about 83%. And we're very pleased with that as a university. We think there's a lot of room for improvement in the success and graduation rates and completion rates of students in higher education. And that's one of the tasks that we need to do on the continent and in higher education. I don't know, some of you may have watched the film in which Denzel Washington stars. It's called The Debaters, or The Great Debaters. And he plays a part of the teacher who coaches these kids in debate. And one of the things he constantly says to them is, the teacher says to them is, you've got to do what you have to do so that you can do what you enjoy doing or what you need to do. And I have a sense that we've got to do what we have to do in higher education on the continent before we can do some of the fancy things we enjoy doing. We have to get the basics right on the continent, and not just in higher education, but in everything else. With these few words, I would really want to welcome you to the University of Johannesburg, hoping that I've given you some picture of this animal inside whose belly you now sit, so that you understand it a little better. And I hope too that I have managed to make you feel at home and make you feel welcome, and to invite you to join us in this great continental task of building young minds and increasing skills on the continent. With these few words, I say welcome and enjoy your conference. Thank you.